So looks like we're 6 o'clock, so we're gonna call this meeting to order. First item on the list is to make sure we go through and who we've got, and we have members that are available. I'm just gonna go down my list. Ed? Here. Kevin? Here. John? Yes. Here. Kimberly?
Yes, hi.
Hi. Alan?
Here.
And Talai?
Here.
Okay, so it
Oh,
looks like we
how?
have all of our voting members here tonight. Kimberly, would you be available to read the land acknowledgement?
Sure. The Lacey Historical Commission meets on the ancestral lands of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and Squaxin Island Tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people immemorial of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allow our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. And we recommend that all community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854.
Thank you, Kimberly. The next up on our agenda is the approval of the amended agenda and minutes. I'm trying to remember what the amended item was to the agenda.
It's on here. I think we just added some best
Oh,
packet
okay.
material.
So the presenters that were added.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will welcome a motion to approve, or if everybody's okay with that.
I'll motion to approve.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I think we're good to go on that. The next thing on our list is to look at the August 21st, 2024 minutes. Do people have any suggestions or changes that they want to see made in those?
I'll move adoption as distributed.
And Ed made a second. Any discussion of that? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing no opposition, we will consider those approved as well. Do we have anybody who signed up for public comment?
We do not have anyone who signed up for public comment, and we got no written public comment, and I think these are numbers.
Okay. So I think we move on to our first business item, the advisory board handbook updates. And we have a whole set of guests for this. So we have Shannon Kelly Fong, Alyssa Fontaine, Brandy. How do you say the last name? Brandy.
Wants to handle PowerPoint.
I'll start off.
Oh, White. Oh, it was easy.
The keyboard.
Brandy, how do you say your last name?
The mouse.
Legomina. Okay. Thank you.
9 Legos.
All right, well, good evening, commissioners. I'm Shannon Kelly Fong, and I am one of your hosts for this evening, for this specific agenda item. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Lacey, and I'm also joined here by our clerk's office, and I'll have them introduce themselves.
Good evening, Alyssa Fontaine, City Clerk. Brandy Legomina, Deputy City Clerk.
And Paul White, Deputy City Clerk.
Welcome.
All right, well, we are here to talk about a couple of items, and the first one we're going to start off with is our advisory board handbook update. And then the rest of the items at the clerk's office will be part of the things we'll go over here in our advisory board handbook, and then also providing some best practices for public meetings. So just really quickly, if you take anything away from this meeting, we've got 4 key topics and takeaways, and that is number 1, communicate with your staff liaisons. I know you're working with Aaron here, Carter is also here. So please communicate early and often and every chance you really get with Aaron about, especially meetings. So the second item is quorums. Quorums are key. So without having a quorum, we can't do the business of the historical commission. And so if you know you are going to miss a meeting or maybe be late to a meeting, please make sure you contact your staff liaison and communicate that so that we can run effective and efficient meetings.
And this one, our quorum is 4, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And then don't create unnecessary public records. I think that's just a really good rule. And we'll go into the details of what public records are and some of the state requirements. But if you don't need to create a public record, don't do it. And then finally, Robert's rules are here to help. So we're going to provide some best practices for how to run meetings using Robert's rules for you all to use as tools here moving forward. We'll start, like I mentioned, with an overview of the updated advisory board handbook, really focusing most of our attention on some changes to public comment and public hearings. We'll talk about public meetings and public records. And like I mentioned, we'll wrap it up with Robert's rules and some meeting best practices. So just to set the stage for you all, what I do want to communicate is we are going around to every advisory board with this presentation, and I should say not every, we are going to, we did the planning commission, we're here at the historical commission, we're going to go to the Parks, Culture and Recreation Board, and we're also going to go to the Commission on Equity. And we're providing the same background and tools for various advisory boards to use. But what really started this all was we had a incident with our Commission on Equity where it was Zoom bombed during the public comment period. And there was just absolutely reprehensible hate-filled speech that was provided as public comment during one of the meetings. And this really took a moment for us to say, let's take a look at our policies and make sure that we are providing our advisory boards, our staff liaisons, and even our city council with the best tools available to be able to respond to a situation like this. So we started with some research, and I think it's really fundamental to start with our US Constitution. And our First Amendment says that you can't abridge the freedom of speech. And so this is really key when we are thinking about, well, what can we do in response to these public comments? And so then we started to look at, well, what is hate speech and how is that defined? And in the United States, as you can see here from the definition by the American Library Association, hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. It can only be criminalized when it indirectly incites imminent criminal activity or consists of specific threats of violence targeted against a person or a group. And this same sentiment is codified in our RCW here with a hate crime offense. So words alone do not constitute a hate crime offense unless the context or the circumstances surrounding the words indicate the words are a threat. Threatening words do not constitute a hate crime offense if it is apparent to the victim that the person does not have the ability to carry out the threat. So hate speech is protected. However, when it crosses over to a hate crime, that is a different circumstance. So with public comments, it is considered a limited public forum for free speech purposes, meaning that governments can regulate the time, the place, and the manner of speech, provided that the regulations are reasonable and content neutral. So that's without regard to substance or the message itself. Here in Washington, for public meetings, all regular meetings of the governing body where final action is taken, they must receive public comment. So after researching all of this, we decided to take a look at what was found in our city council policies and then also our advisory boards, and really to align our public comment and our public hearing policies between those two policy documents. So what we did in addition to making changes to our public comment and public hearing policies was we also did a read through of it, just streamlined some of the materials. The guidebook itself was created back in 2011, and a lot of information was included, and in some places there was a lot of repetition. And we also wanted to put a lens of just looking at a plain talk. And so we really streamlined some of the information that was included. We also updated some of the information that was included. So there were still references, as an example, to the Board of Park Commissioners, which that commission has changed to the Parks, Culture and Recreation Board. So we wanted to make sure we were providing the most up-to-date information. Zoom type. We updated the public comment and public hearing policies, and then we also added the addition of new tools in the appendices with the public comment script, notes on public comment, and then the disruption script, which we'll get here into in just a little bit more detail. This went through multiple reviews. We worked with advisory board staff liaisons. We took it to the youth council. We took it to the Commission on Equity. And we met several times with the Lacey City Council and refining the public comment and public hearing policies. And finally, the Lacey City Council adopted updates to their policies as well as the advisory board handbook in August 6th of this year. So we'll take a real quick look at the elements in the handbook. You can see it's got a table of contents that really outlines the chapter 1 is kind of the introduction and the interpersonal standards, protocols, and ground rules. And then chapter 2 gets into some more of the details of open government requirements. And then there is an appendices. So just as a very high level, and we'll take a look at this in the handbook itself, but when we're talking about public comment, what was established through the updates was number 1, that it supersedes various advisory board procedures on public comment. So if there had been something established by an advisory board, this public comment is now in effect. And for public comment, it establishes that the city and all of its advisory boards will take in-person public comment at meetings. So you can sign up, and we have all of this new signage, if you look behind you here as you enter City Hall, that designates public comment and where to sign up. So if you sign up in the sign up sheet, you will have the opportunity to be called, provided it's within the time frame in which public comment goes. If there is time, the presiding officer can also call up anybody who did not sign up for public comment in person. Remote public commenters need to sign up in advance of the meeting for 2 hours in advance. So we have the ability through our Zoom function for individuals to sign up and say they would like to provide public comment. This information then gets routed to the staff liaisons if anybody has signed up, and lets them know to pass it on to the presiding officer that they have registered. Outside of individuals who registered 2 hours in advance, no additional remote public comment is taken at meetings. Additionally, the final third way is written public comment. So very similar to the remote public comment, any written public comment needs to be provided 2 hours in advance of the meeting to the city. So that way the city can distribute it to all of the advisory boards. For public comment, the presiding officer can determine the order of public comment. Public comment itself is now limited to 3 minutes each to each individual, and you can't donate your time to another individual. So you have 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. And I know, Commissioner, you experienced our new setup yesterday with the countdown timer. And so it clearly shows you how much time you have left when you're speaking to city council for that 3 minutes.
Seconds on the table.
You did. Per the new policies, public comment is for a total of 30 minutes. However, this can be extended by the consent of the body. So if you have, for example, a lot of individuals who have signed up appropriately to provide public comment, you could, at your discretion, extend that time. You could also allow an additional public comment period at the end of the meeting as well.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Would the appropriate thing to do if it's something that the commission wants to talk about would be for them to put it on a future agenda? Like if somebody gives public comment and it's something they want to talk about, do they talk about it at the meeting or do they put it on a future agenda to talk about?
So let me make sure I'm understanding
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you're saying correctly. So Erin, so if somebody brought up public comment,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the public comment, commissioner said, hey, that's a really interesting idea. Maybe we should think about putting it onto a future agenda. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's certainly something that could be discussed. And I'll turn it over to the clerks to see if they have anything that they would add in that situation.
Yeah, I think to that point for, public comment is for the public to express and provide comments to the body and not for an invitation of dialogue or discussion. So ultimately keeping that 3 minutes for the commenter and them alone, but if there is any follow-up or interest in exploring the topic further or inviting that particular individual back for additional conversations, putting it on a future agenda item does give notice to the public properly so that they can prepare for whatever that topic is. And then it gives staff time to kind of vet what that presentation looks like and how much time are we allotted, and it gives it kind of all of those elements to consider.
And so I think, yeah, just to highlight too what Alyssa was saying of not engaging in the dialogue with the individual, but engaging as a dialogue with this group of saying we're interested in this topic and passing that information on to the staff liaison to make sure that it gets incorporated into a future conversation, or the staff liaison can reach out to that individual to make sure that they work on bringing them back as, say, a presenter, as Alyssa mentioned. Did that answer the question?
Yep, that
Well,
did.
just gonna say it, back in the old days. It was difficult when someone said something pretty outrageous about an individual council member and they wanted to respond, just a normal emotion. And then those things led to some pretty inappropriate exchanges. I can think of one down in the city of Olympia where one council person almost slapped another one
Oh, geez.
over it. So I think they've all come to the conclusion, do not engage, period, no matter how badly you want to respond. So I think that's the origin of it, and it's the right thing to do. And it's also the right thing as if the commission thinks that's a darn good idea. Once the people have cleared the area, then you can say to staff, would you please put that on next week's or next month's?
It makes sense too, because it allows other people who would be interested in that topic to then
Yes.
come in rather than getting only a single side.
Right, not only one side, but other
Right.
sides.
And I think too, that's exactly what Alyssa was mentioning of allowing us to public notice that that is going to be a topic for consideration to get other perspectives, whether they come for public comment or just to hear what the dialogue and discussion is at that meeting.
Makes sense.
And we will get into, to your point, Commissioner, just some tools that we've provided on how to respond to some problematic comments that are made during public comment. So I think just the other couple of things I wanted to highlight here, just at high level, is that we're also requiring that people who provide public comment say their name, their residence or connection to the city, and then the topic of their public comment. And there are some clearly identified prohibited items, which we'll take a look at here. So I'm gonna close this and we're gonna just jump into. Didn't mean to click that one.
Were you looking for the handbook?
I am looking for the handbook.
I did not see it in the folder.
That's okay. I can find it really quickly and I can also show everybody where you can find it. So
Perfect
it's,
opportunity.
yeah, absolutely. I think this is.
That's why she has no assistants and you have two.
Fair enough.
All right, so I'm gonna share my screen once this loads here, so we can start from the webpage and where you'd be able to find this information moving forward. So,
If you close out, because you did click share before you opened.
here we go. With all of our powers combined, we will get there. Thank you for the assist. Oh, that's not the one that I had though.
You went to a different tab.
We'll try it again.
I hope we don't get comments from Ayatollah.
All right, so here's the city's webpage, and to find where the advisory board handbook policies are, you go up here to government and you can go to advisory boards and you can hit this button to see all of the advisory boards that are there. But if you just want general information on the advisory boards, just select advisory boards. And if you scroll down here, but not that much, you can see here that it has the advisory board handbook under standards, protocols, and ground rules. And this is the latest handbook. So if you click on that, it will take a second to load, but this is our updated version. And I'm gonna skip here through the first couple of portions because we've already gone through what the content changes are here. And we're gonna skip down to where the public comment policies are. So just to recap here, public comment policies were added as its own section in section 208. You can see it defines how bodies will take public comment, as I mentioned, with the in-person, the remote, the written. It also talks about the rules that I went over at a high level for public comments, including the presiding officer determining the order, what individuals must provide to provide public comments, how time is limited to 3 minutes here, and that public comment is allotted for a total of 30 minutes. And that there is the opportunity to extend this time at the discretion of the presiding officer with the consent of the advisory board. And I'll zoom in here a little bit. Hope that's a little bit more helpful here. And then there's also the prohibited items. So prohibited items include those that have specified public hearings, because we want that testimony to go with that public hearing. So if something has its own designated time, saying, it sounds like you're wanting to speak to this public hearing, could you please wait, provide your comments until that time? Electronic or physical presentation recordings or props are not allowed. Banners and signs are allowed as long as they're on the back of the wall and they don't impede the work of the advisory board. Disruptions or interruptions, including clapping, cheering, booing, interrupting speakers, candidate endorsements are not allowed. And then also specific threats of violence targeted against a person or a group with a reasonable fear of harm to person, property, or sexual harassment are prohibited. The rules for public hearings mirror the public comment rules with a couple of slight changes. And so the first thing I want to just point out is that for what individuals need to provide, they just need to provide their name and city of residence or connection to the city, because presumably the topic is related to the public hearing. So they can just start providing their public comments. Testimony, like public comment, is all limited to 3 minutes and there is no time frame. So public hearings will go as long as public hearings need to go. Very similarly, you can see that there are prohibited items here, just listed very similarly to the public comments. We added this section, meeting disruptions, which just provides, again, background and information for advisory boards on what can happen in case of a serious disruption, what Washington State allows for advisory boards and other governing bodies to do, and how you can proceed with doing this if this were to occur.
Is there a rough definition of what constitutes a serious disruption?
Sure, yeah. So, Paul, do you want to answer that question?
So, well, do you have, is it spelled out in the handbook by definition?
Examples for that.
Examples, okay. So, an example of something that constitutes disruption might be, someone failing to yield the floor after their time has expired. Chanting, booing, hissing, anything that obstructs the view of others or makes the meeting unable to proceed. Simply stating opinions that are offensive is not necessarily a disruption.
So, and yeah, to Paul's point, everything he said is accurate. And what we have had here is, again, disruptions and interruptions. So clapping, cheering, booing, interrupting speakers, candidate endorsements, anything that doesn't allow the body to continue to proceed with its work. And especially when an audience is not recognized by that body member to speak. So, thank you, Paul. All right, so in addition to that, we added some additional appendices here, the public comment script and the notes regarding public comment and disruption script. So I'm going to skip down to those really quickly. Skipping over each advisory board's protocols, those are all still in there. So here in Appendix 6, you see the public comment script, and this is really just a tool to help presiding officers start public comment. So you can see, like, prior to a start of a meeting, you can make an announcement that just recognizes that there is the sign-in sheet, and if people want to provide comment, to sign it over there. Public comment, it provides kind of a script for the presiding officer. So to the point we were talking about earlier here, now is the time to hear from the community. We welcome your comments, which are very important to the advisory board members, and that public comment is not a dialogue. The purpose is for the community members to provide you information and not to engage in a back and forth. We also provide that, it may also be helpful that comments are made to the board as a whole and not to individuals, which I think, Commissioner, that gets back to your point of making very personal statements about individuals to make them more broadly about the commission or the work of that advisory body. And then also going over those rules of the 3 minutes and the 30-minute, et cetera. Providing your comments, or to start your comments, providing your name, your city of residence or connection to the city, and then the topic or subject matter of your comments. And then also providing some script language in case comments start to go long after that 3 minutes to interrupt the speaker and wrap up those comments. So that way we're providing everybody the same opportunity for time and we're regulating it comprehensively across the board. All right. Also, just some additional things about, directing comments to public hearings, not having the disruptions, not having the electronic or recordings or props, et cetera. In addition to that script, which again, you can take and modify and use how you want to, we also provided notes on public comment. And so going back to our discussion about the difference between hate speech and hate crime offenses, it clearly states that the public has the right to make personal, critical, or harsh remarks. This includes hate speech, and that what an advisory board can do in response to that is let the individual who's making hate speech or any problematic comments finish those comments, finish their 3 minutes of time. And then after that time has expired, to make a comment broadly, not to the individual themselves, but to say something to the effect of, this was a problematic comment and here's why. So for example, we have the comments that were just made are deeply problematic, harmful to the community, contain hate speech, and are wholly inconsistent with our community values. The city is committed to eradicating all forms of racism and oppression and working to change that leads to a more equitable society for all community members. Similarly, if information that was provided is absolutely incorrect or false, you can make a broad comment afterwards, again, correcting the information. So for example, we've provided here a couple of them, the comments that were made erroneously and false information. And I've used the example here of the person who commented last said that Alyssa Fontaine was the city engineer. She is actually the city clerk. So providing the correction of what the misinformation was and what the correct information is. Also redirecting individuals to the place that their comment may have more impact. So for example, broadly again, not to the individual, but comments that were made about the school district policies should be provided to the school district. The school district is a separate governing body from the city and it has its own policy makers. So just providing information.
Would that apply also if people were coming here to talk about something that's really not a historic commission topic? And we would refer them to the city council or to another board.
Yeah, and I think the important thing though is to allow them to have their 3 minutes of time to speak to the topic that they are speaking to. And then again, at the end saying the comments that were made could be directed to the city council.
Okay.
Could I just, the first time I got run in one of these things is over Spokane 50 years ago, but what one of the guys there did, he was a prosecutor that had been involved in a lot of things like this. And what he finally did is he just, after the guy had his time, he said, well, he called the newspaper guy over and got the two of them together, took them out in the hall, and he made his pitch to the newspaper, and it worked like it was great. I mean, the newspaper took it down and he was happy. And I've seen that done 2 or 3 times over there. It was very well done. But it's some way you can get it out. You'll get them gone. It was just real interesting to me.
Another thing too, that is a tool is to say, a staff member will connect with the individual, right? And to direct them again to somebody who may be able to debrief with them for longer periods of time and work through whatever the issue could be and get more information as well.
Most of the time, the people have gotten really mad, but they're reasonable human beings. They wouldn't be in a place like that. So you don't have you don't have the same worry about that you have with vicious people, but you've got normal people handling that usually. I mean, whatever that is.
All right, and our last addition to the appendices is that disruption script for city council or advisory boards. And I will make the note that there is one edit we're gonna make to this, and that is just to, again, clarify that in order to proceed with adjourning a meeting, that you have to have the consent of the body to do so. And so we'll add some additional language, but you can see here the processes and what you could use as a speech to help in those types of scenarios and situations. So these are tools that are now in the advisory board handbook for you all to take a look at and to have on you in the future. And then also the new rules with the public comment policies and public hearing policies are in effect as of current. So we're working with all of our staff liaisons on that implementation. So I'm gonna turn it over now if there are no additional questions to the clerk's office, and they're gonna go into a little bit more detail on some of the other items that are included in the handbook.
Musical mouse.
Need the keyboard.
Sorry, there should be open navigate.
I was worried I was getting away.
Well, thank you again for having us this evening. My portion of tonight's presentation, we're gonna review some public meetings and public records. So all of this will be kind of a refresher, but we'll also dive into some specifics on that as well. So what to expect tonight, we're gonna do a general overview as well as some key definitions. Touch on compliance and that being a shared responsibility. Highlight some resources and go over some best practices. So part one, the Open Public Meetings Act. In an effort to make government affairs more open, transparent, and accessible, legislature passed the Open Public Meetings Act in 1971. So this allows, in most cases, full public access to the details of all phases of deliberation, policymaking, and decision-making process. So the Open Public Meetings Act is also known as the OPMA, and the OPMA governs public meetings. So what makes it a public meeting? A meeting occurs when a quorum or majority of a governing body gathers with the collective intent of transacting the governing body's business. Meetings do not have to be in person to be subject to the OPMA. Meetings can occur by telephone, email, and electronic media. This is an important note because we will tie this back into some compliance and best practices to avoid violating the OPMA. All right, what is a quorum? A quorum is a majority of the governing body. So for a seven member body, 4 members is a quorum. For government bodies with voting and non-voting members, a quorum is actually the smallest number of people who must be present in order to take action by voting. All right, so why is a quorum important? With a quorum, you're able to hold a meeting, take action. There's a lot of components that the staff work behind the scenes to facilitate a live stream, a recording, that official record of the meeting, make available to yourselves as well as the public, and then take minutes. Without a quorum, we lose almost all and pretty much all of that. So I'll cover the yellow dot up here, but without a quorum to start a meeting, the meeting really cannot be held as advertised. We cannot take action, and there will be no live streaming or recording of that meeting, and therefore no minutes. Losing a quorum, so after a meeting has proceeded or started, and if a quorum is lost during the duration of the meeting, we lose action on some elements as well. And I'm gonna cover the details of why there's some cautionary yellow here on the diagram. So back to kind of the point Shannon was making earlier, keep in an open line of communication with staff liaisons. If you're running late and we know that, Commissioner is gonna be just 5 minutes late, that is something that we can work with to start a meeting. Just as far as starting with no quorum, or if we know that it's gonna be just a little bit delayed versus, oh, we've been advised that several members are not able to attend this date, we're not gonna actually hold the meeting on that date and we'll make a reschedule. So that's not happening there at the time that the meeting start scheduled date. All right, so what to do when there isn't a quorum to start a meeting? So we're gonna kind of review kind of a practice, and this is gonna be something that the presiding officer works in connection with the staff liaisons. But prior to meeting start time, confirming that attendance, having remote participants, checking and making sure, are they all a part as a panelist, or maybe they are over in the attendee world of Zoom, and just need to be brought in. Checking and making sure that we don't have a quorum, but we do anticipate there being a quorum because somebody has advised that they will be here momentarily. So when you don't have a quorum to start, but you're anticipating one, you do, the best practice is to start the meeting as close to the scheduled start time as possible. So staff would work with the body to do so. And providing an announcement that you're actually waiting for a quorum, and kind of give that estimate of we anticipate starting in 5 minutes or so. And letting the public know and coming on and being a part of the recording for that. If a quorum is confirmed, you're able to then unmute yourself and go back on live and hold the meeting. If a quorum cannot be confirmed, going back onto the live stream and announcing that a quorum is not present and that the meeting will have to be rescheduled for a future date. So the meeting cannot be held without a quorum. I will note as well, so the yellow cautionary circle for holding the meeting, although it's not a best practice, if members are present and a quorum is not here and the meeting cannot be held, afterwards, the meeting being closed, members can still receive and discuss items with staff and receive kind of that passive information. So what to do when a quorum is lost after the meeting has proceeded? So this is something that staff are constantly kind of working to monitor, as well as presiding officers. If you see, members get up and leave the room, announce that the quorum has been lost out into the public, and so that's captured as part of the record. If a quorum is not expected to be regained, immediately adjourn the meeting. Sometimes there's technology issues, somebody falls off, but there's, letting them know that they're coming back on, or maybe somebody stepped out, but they are going to be returning. Just kind of gauging what the expectation is on regaining a quorum. If a quorum is expected to return, provide a recess, take a break. The meeting cannot continue until a quorum does return. No action can be taken if a quorum is lost. So that is key, and ultimately, if the quorum is not expected to be regained, then the meeting does need to be adjourned immediately. Any questions so far? Okay. But why is this important? All elected and appointed officials must complete trainings under the OPMA within 90 days of taking oath of office or assuming duties as appointed members. You all have taken this training in various forms, and a refresher course is required at least every 4 years. So our intent by being here today is that this will qualify as a refresher training, and that we will mark everybody present here as being able to have that certificate for that required training. We are also not here just because we have to be. Providing education is a great tool to reduce risk of violating the OPMA. So some liabilities under the OPMA. Any action taken at a meeting held in violation of the OPMA is considered null and void. Any member of a governing body who attends a meeting knowingly that violates the OPMA is subject to potential personal liabilities that can range from $500 to $1,000 in penalties. And then any person who prevails against the agency for violation of the OPMA may be awarded all costs, including attorney fees. So it can get costly if something were to occur where the city or subsequent advisory boards were violating the OPMA. As mentioned, compliance is a shared responsibility, so we are here to support. the city clerk's office, as well as staff liaisons, really help ensure that meetings subject to the OPMA adhere to some of the following requirements, but many others as well. So making sure that the agendas are published in accordance with the OPMA, ensuring a quorum, that communication piece that we were talking about. And then taking the meeting minutes and ultimately, once those are approved, making those available to the public. And then proper noticing, if we know that there is going to be a potential quorum at another city event or another meeting body, we do notice all of that so that we are in compliance with the OPMA. Some additional resources for meeting support. As Shannon detailed earlier, we have the advisory board handbook online, as well as our public meetings portal. This is where you can find all of your published meeting materials, past, present, and future, and go back and see approved minutes and conduct keyword searches, not just for the historical commission, but for all of the public meetings that the city facilitates. And then we have our trainings such as tonight and others that we are working to incorporate. And then if there's any questions, asking a clerk or your staff liaisons, we're happy to help. All right, so how can you help? We have it set up that designated staff members distribute all our informational documents for meetings to each member. These next two bullets will kind of tie back into that meetings can occur everywhere as far as electronic, email, other electronic platforms. So by not sending an email to all or majority of the governing body, we don't want communications going to the majority by any other than designated staff for informational purposes. Not using reply all when the recipients are all or a majority of a governing body. This runs the risk of creating a serial meeting, which really is occurs when a majority of members have a series of smaller communications or gatherings that result in a majority of the body collectively taking action. So if you are replying all and this just continues on, this can constitute a meeting that has not been properly noticed and is a violation of the OPMA. Similarly, forwarding and CCing along a whole path of emails can also constitute a violation. Play it smart with travel arrangements, making sure not a quorum is not present or is all together for travel arrangements. It's the best practice and gives transparency. And advising staff liaisons and the chair when possible if you are unable to attend a meeting or if any emergencies arise. Right. We successfully made it through part one. How are we feeling? Great. All right. Part two, public records. So the Public Records Act was enacted in 1972 to provide people with broad rights of access to public records. Washington State's Public Records Act is one of the strongest open government laws in the nation and supports a transparent and accessible government. So what is a public record? A public record is defined as any writing prepared, owned, or used or retained by a state or local agency. So a lot of the work that you all do here in the Historical Commission qualifies. That can look like a lot of things. Writing is a very broad definition, especially in terms of technology these days. So since a writing is so broadly defined, any communication and documents created, received, or used as part of your duties relating to the advisory board may be considered a public record. There is no distinction regarding whether or not the record was created or stored on a personal device or account. This ties into the city providing city issued email addresses to kind of help mitigate and preserve any public records, as well as ensuring that anything that you all work on gets forwarded back over to staff so that it's properly managed. So the city is subject to legal authorities that require public records be retained for different lengths of time depending on the content, function, and purpose of the record. There are software tools and resources as well as processes in place to ensure best practices are conducted. So because compliance is a shared responsibility, we ask that anything created or used in your role get forwarded to staff so that it's preserved, managed, and then ultimately disclosable should we get a request. Two different acts that we work under for this, the preservation as well as the disclosure. Requesting records. Requests for public records can be made formally or informally to any employee or elected official. It is crucial that any requests for agency records be forwarded to disclosure staff as soon as possible. We have very strict response timelines and have to respond to public records requests within 5 business days. That is a legal requirement. So managing city issued email addresses, this is something that comes into play that you want to check those frequently, or potentially even set up automatic responses, advising that this is not a city employee email and that any questions or concerns regarding the historical commission can be directed to staff. Or if you have prolonged or anticipate prolonged absences, to have some kind of automatic reply. So going back to those emails, the city may provide advisory board members with official city email addresses, which you all have currently. And the email accounts may not be used for personal communication. So this is strictly the role here on the historical commission or the advisory board in which you serve. For those city email accounts, the city does have processes and software in place, and those emails will be captured and retained per the city's policy and all legal requirements. So we have archiving solutions in place. You're still able to manage your Outlook. If you need to delete spam, sort folders accordingly, that's perfectly acceptable. We have everything retained. All right, so the city clerk is the official public records officer for the agency, but we have many disclosure staff here helping us out. So there are staff here in the city clerk's office with Brandy and Paul, as well as staff in the police department and joint animal services to really kind of help field all of the public records requests that we are required to respond to. Checking in with staff liaisons if you think you received a request or if you've got an inquiry from a member of the public, forward it immediately or contact the clerk's office just so that we can all be on the same page and make sure that we're meeting our requirements. All right. So how to help? Being mindful in creating records. We all need to create records for the roles that we're in and the responsibilities, and you know, that sometimes is a best practice is to create records, but being mindful in doing so. So this includes taking notes. Only use city technology in accordance with policies and legal requirements. Not deleting records created in your official capacity without checking with staff first. So going back to emails, that is perfectly acceptable because those are retained and captured on the back end and it does not have to be managed by yourselves. Please don't retain records created in your official capacity don't retain the records created in your official capacity once you've transferred to staff liaisons. Once you've transferred it over, that becomes that final record and you no longer need to retain a duplicate copy. Check city issued email accounts frequently and use automated replies for when you expect to have a prolonged absence. That concludes my portion. Any questions?
So I have
Or
a
ideas?
question,
Yes, please.
because I'm not sure how this plays with official role, non-official roles. So, you know, as chair, I understand that any kind of written communication I have, like say with Aaron or Jen or et cetera, is going to be an official record. One of the things I do on the sideline to being involved in this is that I act as essentially as one of our ad hoc connections to the Thurston County Historical Commission for one of their projects, which is right now the one I've been working on actively has been their RAC write-ups for their various panels. That has involved lots of everything from sending notes that we learn about different things and trying to figure out how we incorporate those into the narrative to, you know, some editing, sometimes finding picture attributions, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Are those official acts and do they have to be kept as a record?
So Aaron and I have worked closely on this and there's some gray area, but ultimately requests for public records, there's a line with museum collection items. So what has been donated to the museum? What is, if you're doing like research projects and you're going through like collection
Well,
material?
it's like I've interviewed people and then passed along notes from it. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit more about the specifics in the scenario and maybe what might tie into a public records request, or are you wanting to know, are you creating public record?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out at this stage.
Yeah, I think might need some more detail and we can definitely connect offline because I'm happy to
Okay.
hear more.
Okay.
But there is, especially with, you know, museum work, there is some difference in if in research inquiry comes in and they're looking for information regarding a set time period, and we work with our museum staff to produce information to them, which includes records, but ultimately it wasn't created by the city. It was donated or collected or obtained through the museum's collection. So there's a little bit of
Well, that's why I was asking.
yeah,
is
no, it's
because
a
an
great
interesting-
question.
Because that liaison position creates
Yeah.
an interesting, not quite official, but nevertheless,
It's on city networks, so
related.
the emails.
it's always been mostly private email
Okay,
with a
then yeah,
large part of that.
then yeah, I think this is ultimately, this might be kind of a unique scenario.
I
But
actually do think a lot of what you've probably done could be construed as public record, because what he's doing is working with the Thurston County Historic Commission on behalf of the Historical Commission.
okay, yeah, let's talk and get a little bit more
Okay.
framework around it, and I'm
Okay.
happy to help
Okay,
figure out the.
I'd never even thought about it. in
And
this
it
context.
started before you had city email, so.
Oh, yeah, and I just hadn't thought about it in this context at all, because it was
Yeah.
very much not,
We've got things that we can touch on and definitely kind of, if we need to fold the information in and best practice, we can define that for you.
okay.
The point is, it's being collected now.
Yes, yep,
And I think the second point of that is, commissioners, the clerks here are here to help, right? To ask these kind of questions and to connect.
Well,
with
that's
them and
my
Get
bad.
responses.
we
Absolutely, and I
appreciate
think
it.
it's one,
Last year.
it's a very nuanced conversation, and so
Yeah.
having the time to research and come back to get
They
us.
pay her as an engineer, right? So that's.
I'm gonna correct that misinformation.
No, great question. Yes.
So we have some parliamentarians there. I challenge the decision of the chairs that still take 2/3 to agree with me to overturn the chair's decisions.
Paul, you're up.
It should be a majority vote.
Majority, thank you.
I think that's a good segue into our next slide deck.
Yes, thank you for that. So I'm going to
What
set,
edition are you using?
Well, these are 11th edition, the current edition is 12. It's about a year and a half that it's been out. All right.
great transition, thank you.
Yeah, that's super. Great segue. So commissioners, my name again is Paul White, and this is Brandon Laganina, and we are your deputy city clerks in the clerks department. So tonight we're going to give a high-level intro to Robert's rules and provide some pro tips to help you get the most out of your meetings. We noticed that no one has brought their copies so that we can go, so that you can follow along as we go in great detail into every one of these motions. We may not be able to get through all 716 pages.
I'll share.
We can share.
If I'd have known, I would have brought mine.
I know, I bet you would. We're kidding. We're gonna be about 15 minutes on this. It's very high level, so. So essentially, and for those of you who are super familiar with rules of order, just accept our apologies in advance. Essentially, Robert's rules is a system of conducting group meetings clearly, fairly, and efficiently. And our goal tonight is to sort of reduce any sort of intimidating, bothersome, or bureaucratic notions that you may have about Roberts, so that you can face the situations that come up in meetings clearly and calmly. So let's start with what Robert's rules are intended for and go over some basic principles. See, it just right. Robert's Rules is a system used so that everyone has a chance to be heard. So we all know what we're agreeing to, and no one person gets to waste everyone else's time. Tonight, we're gonna go over each of these topics. When you're following Roberts, you take things one at a time. One subject at a time, one speaker at a time. We use motions to take actions, and motions need a second. And you all are very familiar. I watched it in practice at the beginning of your meeting. We give every topic full consideration in the form of full and free discussion. And we speak and act with courtesy and professionalism. When it's time to decide, we vote, acting in a way that protects everyone's rights. The right of the majority, for example, to act without 100% consensus. The right of a minority to be part of the decision-making. The right of each member, for example, to have the rules followed. To call a meeting to order, you must have a quorum. No action can be taken without a quorum. Unfortunately, if there aren't enough members present in person or remotely, the meeting will not take place. I think you've heard it, what, 5 times now? So thank you for, just remember, repetition is insistence.
You should make a chant, no quorum, no action.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
Catchy.
I heard you're creating some branding materials, so.
There you go.
I don't know if you should let me.
So of course, then if you can't hold that meeting, it would have to be rescheduled. So we've been trying to stress for everyone's understanding that countless hours have been put into meeting preparation. Agency staff have been preparing items for weeks or months in advance. There may be coordination with outside presenters from other organizations or guests or dignitaries of whatever sort. And there's also the effort and time that's taken by your colleagues who are also with you on the board to show up and be involved. And ultimately, it's also the right of the public to be informed about what's going on. So there is a lot of time that's wasted if you have an unexpected lack of quorum. So somehow, if you should manage to lose your quorum during the meeting, do realize that the meeting has to adjourn and that you cannot continue to take actions. And of course, Melissa went over sort of the gray areas, some gray areas that exist around that, but that's the general rule that you have to stop. So, pro tip.
Pro tips. So we understand that sometimes there's traffic and things can get a little crazy and you're trying to make it here on time and you're running a little behind. If that does happen, 2 key takeaways here is to contact your staff liaison and let us know that you're just running a couple minutes late. If we know that a quorum is expected, the presiding officer can inform everybody that a quorum is expected and the meeting will start shortly. It's important to remember to not start the meeting without a quorum. So the key takeaways here are to talk to your staff. Let us know if you are going to be late. Let us know if you're going to be on vacation and you're planning not to attend the meeting. Let us know if you're going to be attending the meeting remotely. All of these things help us plan for a more efficient meeting.
So a motion is how you go about doing things as a group. We know that the way that we speak when we're following parliamentary procedure or Robert's rules is not really a conversational way of talking. And sometimes that is a little off-putting for how parliamentary speak is sort of structured. But what we want to say about motions is not meant to alter in any way how you as a group have respectful, meaningful conversations about things. So if your group has a more informal tone, we're not asking for your for your discussions to change. What we're focused on here is when it's time to actually make a decision, right, take an action, that once all the facts and opinions have been laid out, that is when Roberts will help. Okay, that is when some of this structure will help. So we want to present a motion as a positive statement. The example we have here is I move to have ice cream on Mondays.
Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to avoid a negating statement. Like this example, I move to not have ice cream on Mondays. So we don't want to do that. When a motion is seconded, that is an indication that the proposal can be considered and discussed. It's permission to keep talking about the thing. If a motion doesn't get a second, it doesn't get discussed. One person can have a great idea, but if the other 6 or however many other people are in your board, and this is a 7-member board, but if the other 6 members already know that they don't want to talk about that, they shouldn't be forced to do so. So the group will not talk about it. Now, you may have heard from time to time, the chair declares something along the lines of, well, that motion dies for the lack of a second. You don't have to say that. That motion doesn't actually die because it was never alive. It needs the second in order to be on the table for people to talk about, so. Now, there are many kinds of motions, but the ones most relevant to the meetings that we all engage in are going to be main motions, like the ice cream example here, amendments, and points of order. Yeah, I think we have a pro tip.
So we have a pro tip for your motions. A good motion is a statement that begs a question with a yes or no answer. Overcomplicating a motion can lead to confusion and ambiguity. So don't do this. Make it easy on yourself by having your motion written down ahead of time. And keep it as simple as you can without changing its meaning. For example, I move to recommend the staff report to City Council as presented.
That yes or no part is important. You know, and depending on what it is you're actually wanting to do, you can go down some rabbit holes pretty easily. So when we talk about an amendment, sometimes the main motion, it's pretty good, but it just needs a little something. I probably don't have to explain this to this group, but I will say it anyway, that amendments are not insults, okay? They're just alternatives, right? So we don't call them friendly as though all the other amendments were unfriendly. They're just suggestions. They're just alternatives. So when you've made a motion and someone says, well, I move to amend the motion too, that doesn't mean that what you just said was the dumbest thing that they ever heard. It just means, would it be better if? So in our example here, we're going to improve, we're going to perfect our motion. You'll go back I think if you scroll up. Yeah, there you go. This particular motion, couple of the characteristics of an amendment motion, it does require a second, and it's its own motion, okay, and it gets its own vote. Yes, there are some examples of how we sort of can shortcut around those, but as a general rule, that's the way you want to go. That's best practice, all right? In this example, we're gonna move to amend the motion from the previous slide to read strawberry ice cream. So we're just making it better, Okay, presumably, except if you're Shannon, who doesn't like strawberry ice cream.
So pro tip, remember, the amended motion is not the main motion. Be sure to go back and finish the vote on the main motion before voting on the amended motion.
Point of order, it's probably going to be fairly rare in your practice, but they are a common type of motion. They have their own set of unique characteristics. A point of order legitimately interrupts the flow of the meeting. It puts a pause on whatever else is going on. It has to be raised as soon as whatever the error is that's being drawn attention to. The chair has to resolve the point. And the chair of the group can disagree with the chair's decision. Okay. So an example, point of order, the chair has failed to call for the nays. Well, the chair might respond, actually, I did request the nays, so the point is not well taken. So he's making a ruling. But would the member like to request the vote be retaken? So that's an example of how just because we're following the path of the order of things, we could still be respectful and friendly in our discourse. So raising the point of order shouldn't be an argumentative action. It just means, hey, I think we might have done that the wrong way. It's good in this context always to assume good intent and take a solution-oriented approach, as with the example here. You asked about it earlier, so I will say, this is the point at which the chair says, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure I called for the nays, so the point's not well taken, but we can take it again if you want. Someone could say, objection, I think the chair's ruling is incorrect. And at that point, the chair has to put a question to the body, give the body the opportunity to decide whether or not he or she made the right call. So then it's so I entertain a motion. Well, how that works, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare this verbiage specifically because this is kind of getting a little bit off of the general interest stuff, but it basically becomes at that point a motion to overturn the rule of the chair, the ruling, right? And then the majority can decide if they disagree with the chair's how the chair ruled on that.
Rarely happens, don't worry.
Sure.
I've always been a troublemaker.
I'll keep that in mind.
So pro tip, chair, if the meeting is getting weird, take a break. There's lots of reasons where you can take a break, but if you are going to, just be sure to announce it to staff and to the public what time the break will be over so that everybody is informed on when to return back to the meeting.
That's when you consult with your parliamentarian and
Yeah, I think if you go back to that slide, I think it brings up a really good point. The chair would like to consult with staff on the member's point. So maybe it is actually taking a look back and saying, did we call for those nays? Did we have that? Or do we need to go back and address that point?
Yeah, it's always an option to just take a pause. And keeping in mind that because the chair has to rule on that point of order, you can't just, you would either have to go ahead and take a moment if it's not really obvious. You'd have to take a moment to sort of consult and say, with staff, what's going on there? Or you might have to stop considering that item on the agenda and come back to it. So you can't just keep going without giving the individual who's raised the point of order the right to have their objection vetted. Yeah. Thank you. So once a motion's been made and seconded, it can be discussed among the board. I'll say that again. Once a motion has been made and seconded, it can be discussed among the board. Roberts offers some some structure for discussion that helps to keep that discussion clear and orderly. Roberts indicates that if a motion, that the member who is making the motion has the first opportunity to discuss it. From there, it is the presiding officer's duty to give each member an opportunity to speak, if they want to, before another member is allowed to speak again. This is meat and potatoes for determining your action. So you've gone through whatever your long conversation was, discussed all the pros and cons, and now you're coming down to what you're going to do. The important thing is to remember to be courteous and professional. All board members have the opportunity to express their thoughts, as long as it's orderly and one at a time.
So a good pro tip would be to have a list of all your board members and to go through your list round robin style to give everybody the opportunity to speak or pass. But making sure that everybody has those opportunities.
And everyone doesn't have to speak, but you have to give them the opportunity. While debate is a healthy way for boards to determine the best action moving forward, it is vital that discussions stay on point, the point of the subject that's being debated. There is not room for remarks that do not pertain to debate. And here we have some examples. Personal remarks, insulting language, personal attacks, profanity, vulgarity, inflammatory remarks. In your debate or in your discussion, those are a breach of decorum. But it's important to say that when the public is speaking to you for their 3 minutes, they're not bound by these same rules.
First.
So a good pro tip would be if a meeting is getting a little hot, speaking in the third person and directing your comments to the chair is a really good way to avoid argumentative statements. And really, as you might already know, taking a break, a recess is also an option.
Those, you said, you did, those are really great ways to heat up a conversation and start a fight. I think we all sort of know that instinctively, but when you're in the middle of a debate like that, sometimes it gets a little hard to keep that in mind. So once the topic has been thoroughly discussed, the board can now call for the vote. For there to be action, the win must be by majority vote. There may be times when a board member might have a conflict of interest. What is a conflict of interest, you may ask? So conflict of interest is any situation in which financial or other personal consideration may unduly influence your judgment. If you believe that you may have a conflict of interest, that's a conflict you're gonna want to discuss with staff right away, as soon as you realize it. And absolutely before the meeting starts, in which you're discussing the item about which you may have a conflict of interest. You want to refrain from participating in the discussion and voting process. So that's an important component. It's not just about not voting.
So if a staff person, if a commission member has a conflict of interest, and let's say we had a quorum of 4 and they have to abstain, does that affect the quorum, or does the vote just simply occur
It may.
with that?
It may in fact affect your quorum, and often,
On that topic.
often you will see special rules of order that make specific exceptions for cases where otherwise a quorum would be lost, right? So the best practice, if you have a conflict of interest, and it's a real conflict of interest or a real appearance of a conflict of interest, all we said was, don't participate in that discussion. But what I know you're assuming as part of that is that you would probably actually remove yourself from the room. And that is best practice. It's not absolutely necessary.
Well, and I wasn't sure if you stayed in the room but didn't participate or vote, does that affect quorum?
That in and of itself would not affect quorum.
Okay.
No.
I'm just asking because, that's
So
where you get in that weird borderline.
I think really good questions, and I think something that's really key, and one of our key takeaways is just to make sure that you're communicating with staff too, so
Right.
staff knows ahead of time if they need to be looking into this, checking in with the clerks, checking in with certain laws
Sure.
and regulations, and so that we know what to prepare for in anticipation that that could occur.
I'm just trying to, because I could see sometimes where you might bridge into something that you didn't expect.
In that scenario, your vote is going to be recorded as an abstention.
Okay,
Okay.
and so that's still counts as quorum.
We want to stress that you should only be abstaining if you have a conflict of interest.
Okay.
We don't
Okay.
just not vote.
I just wanted to
because we
be
don't-
clear about how that rule set works.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for asking that. Commissioner.
Well, in my experience, you ask the person to leave the room. And
Yes.
so then if you no longer have a quorum, you stop action on that item. That's
The idea
that's the world I
being,
came from.
the idea being that then if that item is no longer on the,
They come
on the
back in,
table,
you
that they
get
would
to the
return
rest of the
anyway,
agenda.
right? Yeah. It is, that is one,
Option.
one option, because remember, there's a lot to be said for, and I forgot to look this up from the last time we had this conversation, but there's that scientific principle about how the observer affects the outcome of the experiment, right? So just being in the room can affect whether or not the other people feel comfortable openly having a full and free debate about a subject. So it's definitely a good idea. It might be at that point that an item gets
Table to a
Postpone.
subcommittee.
And that's exactly why we're saying communicate with your staff liaisons so if you think you may, because if the numbers are looking like the quorum is going to depend on every staff member being present, then we're certainly going to have an issue and going to want to try to plan for maybe that item coming at a different time for the body.
One change, I think, somewhat from your time period on the council is where we're visually recording all of these things. I can't be sitting here to be this.
Yeah. Oh, and you could amend the agenda and make that the last item, the person leaves and you're done.
Yes,
Yeah. There's a little bit more restraint. There's a little bit more restraint in that regard.
So a good pro tip for our chair here is to remember that you're a board member too. Remember to vote. Remember to ask for the nays, even if there aren't any. And be sure to declare the outcome, like the motion carries. If the consensus is obvious, use the magic. Use this magic. If there's no objection, please show the motion adopted and be sure to pause. If there's going to be any yays or nays, they'll let you know. Board members, it's your job to speak up with those yays and nays and be sure to let your chairperson know.
it's a very efficient way of getting through approving your agenda, approving your minutes. Which is an interesting motion that I will not go into right now, but you had questions.
I'll wait till you're done.
No, I've said everything I mean to say on that.
Well, I'll get a new version and make sure I'm up to date, but I once was chairing a convention of 4,000 delegates with lots of amendments. It's been my practice and understanding is if you have 4 amendments to the main motion, you do them in reverse order. And you don't get to the main motion until you've dealt with amendment number 4, amendment number 3, amendment number 2, amendment number 1. Then you adopt the main motion. Is that not true anymore?
Well, you don't deal with the main motion until all the amendments have been considered.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
But I'm not familiar with the practice of taking amendments in any order other than the order they are offered.
Well, same thing.
But if I can jump in for a second, if those are amendments to the main
Motion.
motion, you have to consider the motion and then each amendment, and then you roll up any of those amendments that passes, and then you do the vote on the main as amended.
We agree.
Yes, because there's the motion and the second that begin consideration of that motion. But the amendments come before the vote. During the discussion, the debate, that's when the amendments come in.
So that's what I said.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, just to make it clear for all of us who are listening, because, you know, doing the thing, there's actually a couple of different steps here. You know, there's the making of the motion, the putting it into consideration, the discussion and debate, and then the decision. So yes, that's absolutely true. So regarding remote attendance, please do remember to inform staff if you're going to participate remotely. Remember to use the raise hand feature. You know, I think often in our boards, you'll be on board as a panelist in a webinar scenario. So you wouldn't necessarily be muted, but you might be muted. So you want to, you know, if you're muted or if you've been muted for some reason by the meeting organizer, just remember you want to do something that will get their attention. So the hand raising is really great. And remember to turn on your audio and video, at least while you're voting.
We haven't been doing that for video. But it seems to me that would be great.
Well, we have a pro tip about that.
Yes, a pro tip for our video is to keep your video on. It is a good transparent gesture that you are present and participating. It's wonderful that we have the technology to allow accessibility to view and participate in public meetings, but we understand that there may be technical difficulties. As a good faith gesture to transparency, default to have your cameras on. And if you are to run into any technical difficulties, be sure to reach out to your staff liaison so that we can start troubleshooting the scenario for you.
We have just a couple of sort of miscellaneous things before we conclude. Keep in mind that, you know, sometimes a meeting script is a helpful resource, especially for the chair. And if that's something that might help to prompt you through a meeting, you know, talk to us, talk to the clerks, then that's something we can work to provide to you. Calling out names at the start of the meeting during the roll call is a great transparency and accountability. I noticed that you did that for this meeting. Always remember that, you know, you might want to recess just because the meeting has gotten a little long, you know. So if you need it as an individual board member, you can always ask for that recess. Okay. And I wanted to say one other thing, because I made a pretty strong point earlier about the order of taking the motion in the second before you proceed to discussion. And I was kind of waiting to see if I got a response or a reaction on that specific topic. I don't want you to be misinformed. It is often the case with more more casual forms of conversation in smaller boards, that some of that discussion may happen before you actually get around to the motion and the second. And Roberts says that for a small board, and you are a small board, by their definition, that's acceptable. Okay. So it doesn't need to be a point of contention, just understanding that, as long as you're going through those steps so that everyone is put on notice of what is happening at that moment. It's for clarity, it's so we all know what we're deciding on, basically. So, does anyone, go ahead. Does anyone have any interesting sticky situations you've encountered that you would like to ask us about, or things you haven't already
Questions?
quizzed us on?
It was well done. This man runs a tight ship, does it well, follows Robert's rules very well. So
Kimberly helps keep me on track too.
Do any of our remote participants have anything that they would like to add? We thank you for your time.
I have one war story I could ask. Back in the old days, protesters from Olympia, particularly those who didn't like military shipments out of the port, would make the rounds to all the jurisdictions and start protesting and screaming and whatever. And before we had all this kind of stuff, we actually, our council created a policy that if you weren't a citizen of the city of Lacey, you would get to the back of the line for the public comments. And we would tell them that. And that sort of ended a lot of community protests. The other part of our policy statement, which we would say to them, is the city of Lacey has no jurisdiction over the US government, the US military, the Port of Olympia, or anywhere else. We respond to the citizens of Lacey. So if you have something you want to bring up to the council about something happening in Lacey, we're all ears. Now, let's go to the list and see who wants to speak. Is that still true? Do you allow people from other jurisdictions to come in and
Absolutely.
tell you what to do?
Well, no, again, they're just providing their opinion or comment on an item, right? And they've got 3 minutes to do so.
Okay.
But yes, all you have to do is your city of residence or connection.
So the standards have really been ruined since I was in charge here.
Well, I appreciate the information and insight on how you all did that previously.
In the old days.
And we do appreciate the time, again, for us to come here and talk to you about these things. This is, again, there's a big shift in some of the policies that we've had with our advisory boards and our city council. You've also now, just to kind of wrap up and summarize, met your OPMA training requirements, which if you go online, that is actually like a 48-minute class. So I think we much more succinctly did that. And then also some best practices and refresher on Robert's rules. So just tools to help you all continue on in the work that you're doing for the city. And we just want to thank you all for all of the things that you are doing as part of this advisory board. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
This all helped.
Appreciate this. Yeah,
Have a great evening.
thanks.
Good refresher.
Guys, thank you for allowing us to speak.
Aaron, I think you're on point next.
What item is next?
New acquisitions.
Okay, that's what I was trying to pull up, so. Look at me.
Take a pot.
Oh, okay. So why don't we just pause for a second?
Are you gonna recess?
Oh, we'll just recess for a minute while you pull that up and
5 minutes.
5 minutes, so we'll resume at 7:33.
okay, sounds good.
We are taking a recess.
actually, so sorry. So just so you know, you're unmuted.
I just don't know
Yeah.
how much of it is.
I mean, but between being a public employee and everything else, I mean, I have my book of notes, but that's, I would assume at some point, if somebody wanted me to turn it over, then.
Right. Well, it's, you know, just don't,
Little thing, but.
mostly just don't want a surprise.
Oh, yeah. No, that's why this stuff's good. Well, yeah, there's been some stuff now of, there's been a rush of public information requests that are coming out, just people are,
Oh, it's been amazing.
yeah, that's more of an offline conversation, but yeah.
And we are, by the way, unmuted. That's what
Okay.
we're told we have to do, just so you guys are aware.
Okay.
Oh.
Go.
But you are not on video.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
I should have also turned the video on.
Support causing problems, or is there problems going on?
No, this is individuals,
Oh,
We should turn the video back on.
activists.
Open access.
It's just- Sometimes people just,
At city council, they.
some folks like to do just pay up, but that's another.
For a reason.
Mr. West makes a living doing it.
Yeah.
That's
Mr.
the only
West.
reason I did it.
Oh,
was
yeah.
because
I don't know why. I was-
Ex-con, Shelton.
Yeah, yeah.
Learned the trade there, he's made $40,000 to $50,000 a year,
fine.
getting fines from all over the state, any agency that doesn't do meetings.
Sophie,
Arthur West.
where are we at?
What?
Got a minute?
Why, where is she coming back?
What's that?
We lost Tulai. Just,
Okay,
we have one more minute till I said we had to be back. No.
so she might get back. Yep.
Yeah, we just need to
We just
note it.
know that. Yes.
Right on through.
Okay. We're on, okay. So 7:33, we're gonna resume the meeting. We should note that Talai, is not currently on screen. So, is not currently in meeting. We still have quorum. So if you can go ahead and start us up, Aaron, and we can talk about acquisitions.
Yeah. So, I know we are already going way longer than we normally do, so I plan to go at my items at a brisk pace. That doesn't mean I am prohibiting anyone from having their appropriate discussion. Feel free to ask questions or dig in, but I'm gonna assume everybody has reviewed the materials. So there are 3 potential acquisitions. I think these are all pretty obvious, acceptable acquisitions, but I'm open to discussion.
So does anybody have any questions for Aaron about these acquisitions?
Do we have sufficient storage space for all, whatever this is?
Yes, these are all pretty small.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will welcome a motion to accept these acquisitions as part of our permanent collection.
I will motion to make these part of our current collection.
I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
I,
aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, we have voted to approve that, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
That brings us to C, New Museum and Cultural Center Funding Strategy Committee update.
Yeah, we met on August 29th, and Jen gave an update on the newly formed Parks Improvement Funding Work Group, whose work is gonna take place through December of this year, and she already updated the commission, this commission, on that project. Director Burbidge asked for any additions to the list of funding options that might be available And suggestions were made that included impact fees, the cultural access tax, and private foundations as potential sources. Since the PIFU would be reviewing all funding options that could be available. Jenny Folia Jones, who is the consultant, gave an update regarding the fundraising plan and deliverables that she's working on for the city on behalf of the Lacey Community Foundation. She met with recreation and museum staff and toured the museum. And the committee has decided to wait until the new year to meet again, since until then, the Lacey Community Foundation and the Parks Improvement Funding Work Group deliverables are both being worked on. And so there isn't really a lot of discussion that needs to happen on that committee.
Okay.
Jim, do you have anything, or John was there, you were not there, Jim.
No, I was,
John, do you have anything to
I would
add?
just say that it looks like with the other things going on, we probably won't need to meet at our little group that we had until the new year, till we know more.
Yep, that's what I just said.
okay. Okay. Any questions further for Aaron on that item? No, we'll move on to D, museum storage update.
Yeah, so as John just alluded to, storage is a huge challenge for the Lacey Museum. Space is at a premium for exhibits, for collections, programs, event storage, etc. Of course, these are all reasons why we need a new museum, right? But this month we were asked to move some collections that are stored here at City Hall to make room for staff. Because the City Hall is also in need of space. And so we're starting to leak up to the third floor for staff use. That doesn't mean that Marilyn Strickland's office is moving or anything. They just have never taken up the whole floor. So that's gonna be shared. So I have 2 rooms of storage up on the third floor and I have to move those. And so what we are looking at is leasing a space so that we will have a place to store collections and kind of consolidate stuff because we have 2 storage units. So we have 2 storage units plus 2 rooms here, some stuff at the shop, some stuff at the Jacob Smith house. I mean, it's all over the place. So we're hoping that by getting a lease space, we can get everything all in one spot. We have signed a letter of intent, but the lease hasn't been signed yet. So I'll be able to provide you details on what the plan is once the lease is signed. So this is probably the best possible solution that could have happened out of this difficult situation is that we are gonna get a new space to use, so. That's all I have on that for now.
Okay. I'll ask you after the meeting where I'm going to tomorrow to go volunteer.
Here,
Okay.
but you have a shiny new computer,
Oh, good.
fancy.
So then, 2024 plan update, which is a decision item for us.
Yeah, so let me put glasses on so that I can see what I'm bringing with me. So it is that time of year again when we review, so we're starting to near the end of the year. And so as such, we are starting to do our end of the year things. And one of the first things that we do as part of that process is to review our 2020 work plan and update it with the things that we have done and expect to do. And I have, get that away from me. I don't want that. Thank you. So I have highlighted on the document the things that I updated, and I am glad to take any other adjustments to this. And then if this way it can all be ready to go when we're ready to approve it at the end of the year.
Okay. So are we voting to approve tonight or
No,
just
just
suggesting
giving me feedback.
input? Okay. So is it worth, like under number 2, representing the commission on the Lacey Museum and Cultural Funding Strategy Committee, which John and I are doing, does it make sense to say in terms of status that we're meeting, our next meeting is scheduled for 2025? Or is planned for 2025? Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
I had a note to myself, and I don't know whether we discussed this or not, so I'm asking. Under historic properties, we had identified at least 2 properties from the historic property inventory. We noted the Jacob Smith house, and I had a note about adding an interpretive panel there, but I don't know if that was a discussion or just a note to myself.
So the Lacey Historical Society has given us money for an interpretive
Okay,
marker at the
that's-
Jacob Smith House. We're gonna get through this historic preservation consultant first to make sure all the research is done, and that way it'll be much easier to write.
Okay, I just, like I said, I found a raw note about that. I was going, okay, I don't remember exactly where that was left.
I think it's at the very bottom of the.
It was number
It's
1
the very
under
last-
historic
on
properties,
the other page.
The last
under
item.
Jacob Smith house, so
Right,
right.
German marker was under.
It's right here.
Okay, was it on the backside?
Yeah, last item.
No, that was the region, right, oh, okay, there it is, I'm sorry. Oh, so you did have it in there, I'm sorry, I missed that one.
That's all right.
Printing it. Thank you.
I guess, have we made any inroads with talking with the Nisqually Tribal Council? Seeing that on number 1 and 2 for commission and tribal relations.
No, we have not. I feel like the last time that we did this, I mean, I've been questioning whether we should keep this on here because we already do consult with the Nisqually tribe.
As staff, you
on-
mean?
Yeah, as staff all the time. I mean, this is a way for the commission to like make more contact with the Nisqually tribe, but I think if you were gonna do that, I mean, you can't, I think just showing up to a council meeting or something would be weird. That's more of a city council level. So I guess my question for you as you go into developing your 2025 work plan is, what does this mean for you? Is it appropriate at our level for the commission to be doing that? And if so, what is it?
I would delete it.
Yeah, I guess that's, it sounds like kind of a nice to have, but at the same time, it's also gotta be kind of reciprocated that they wanna be involved more with the history, but it sounds like a lot of work that I'm not sure what we're gonna get out of that.
Well, they're really gearing up now and they're gonna be doing a hell of a lot of work that you haven't seen yet.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
totally.
So I think we ought to be sticking with them. I don't think we should pull out of that. I think that's a bad thing. I think we should be seeing more
I
of
guess I
them
wonder-
on a regular basis.
I guess my question for that would be more, is that a historic commission thing, or is that maybe city council planning and development,
Staff.
just other bodies besides this?
Perhaps you could ask someone from the council or the mayor.
Yeah,
Who
so,
thinks that would be an appropriate relationship for us to build.
so at the next meeting, we will be starting to develop our 2025 work plan. And I will talk to Jen, because I think I'll be the one at that meeting, but I'll see what she feels like we need to do about that. But I mean, it's not that at all that I think we all think that tribal relations are really important. It's just that they're handled not through this particular body.
Yeah, it may be more that we want to change it to, can we get a report on the status of communications between the council and the tribe?
Sure,
And make it that way so we're informed and we're involved.
yeah,
Rather than we are the relationship builders.
right.
And that might be something too, just even getting some feedback from council of, getting some guidance from that body that's above us of, if. To my mind, I almost would ask the council if they think that that's important for that to be on our work plan.
Okay.
I think they, like I said, they are moving pretty fast now. They're really starting to go, and I think that.
Yeah.
That they went around. The council pretty much. They weren't ever involved with them, but we should be involved with them more than they are, and with a breakdown and reshuffling of them, I think we should at least have a contact so they know how to get a hold of us.
And they do.
Yeah.
I talk to
Well,
them all the
I
time.
never hear about it, I'll tell you that.
We need a
So-
briefing. Next time.
So other comments on this and folks online, please comment if you've got something. Kimberly Allen.
Okay,
Okay. So I assume the discussion was the action on this particular one. We don't need to make a motion, correct?
Yeah.
So has everybody got what we want on this regard? So let's move down to reports. Lacey Historical Society, are you carrying that, John, or are
I
they?
am, yeah.
Okay.
We had our annual meeting on September fifth at the Lacey Community Center. Our membership was there. We had a quorum and we conducted business. One of the first items we had to do was a sad item. Our colleague, friend, and trustee Robert Southwick passed away in July. And so we did a moment of silence. It's been a great family, long-term history in our county, or in our city, in our area for a long time. So he will be greatly missed.
he was one of the first people that came to talk to me at the museum
Really,
when I started.
you know, very sad, and we'll miss him. At the board meeting prior to the annual meeting, we reappointed John Jajic to fill the vacancy that Robert created. And then at the meeting, we went on to recognize and thank board trustee Peggy McHugo, who is going off the board on December 31st. And also our community volunteer, Lily, who's been doing some wonderful research and posting on the Lacey Historical Society Facebook about a huge number of places and people, including the Lydia Jane Hawk Elementary, Lacey Downs Racetrack, Timberline Library, Lacey Makerspace, Woodland Depot Building, the Lacey Drive-In Theater, Ostrom's Mushroom Farm, and I think 3 or 4 more since. She'll be returning to Central Washington College shortly. So I don't know who's going to pick that up, but I'm hoping that we will continue to have more people posting because it's a great way to get young people and others involved. We then also conducted business and elected officers for next year. So the people that will be on the board until the end of 2026 are myself, Cynthia Pratt, Denise Keegan, Margie Wiley, Larry Ganders, and John Turner. And then 2 others were elected for a 1-year term through the end of 2025. That'd be John Jajic, and our historian of the year, Paul Webb, has agreed to come back on our board. Then for the officers, which is a 1-year tour, starting in January, I agreed to be reelected as president, Cynthia Pratt as the vice president, Kendra Hensley as treasurer, and John Jajic is going to return as the secretary of the group. Then we had a wonderful presentation and it was great about the origins and the beginning of the South Sound Mall by John Donaldson, who was the former marketing director to the Capital Development Corporation. He told great stories about all the many things that they had to go through to get that thing going. It's too bad we didn't have a videotape of it because
It was really good. I learned some stuff.
maybe you could be invited to a history talks and then that would get on base, but it's just a
Is he gonna put together a PowerPoint? Because that's a requirement.
yes, I think he could do that. He had a couple of other younger people there that current.
Oh, that's right. I'll make a note for.
And then Rick Walk, our city manager, told us about the new phrasing for the area around Hunterman Park, which is called Midtown now. We see Midtown. And some of the new things that are going on there. I won't go into all the detail, but there's a couple of really nice conversions of what was formerly empty office buildings into apartments and housing. So it was a great program. Everybody had cake and we're good for another year.
It's good.
Can I say one thing? We walked through there. I take a lot of walks, and we walked through that area the other day. And I was just amazed that it has turned just the last year.
Yep.
It's amazing how much that's changed totally.
And that's the idea, is
I
that
know,
more
that's the
more people
idea.
there and more
Yeah.
walkable areas.
Yep,
And more small businesses that can
did
be
a great job.
supported,
They
so
did a great job.
it is a great job. That's it, sir.
Thank you. Kimberly, anything on the Policy Steps Committee?
No, the Policy Steps Committee is on hiatus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kimberly, while we get you on, you might as well go ahead and give your report. I was gonna go
And
around
I
the
don't
commissioner
have
report.
anything to report. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, do you have anything you'd like to report? I'll circle back around. Why don't we go ahead, Ed? Do you have anything you'd like to be reporting?
Said what I every chance I can get my mouth.
Kevin?
Nothing really to report, but I would like to say that thanks to Lacey Historic Society for the Facebook posts. They've been really informative and done a great job of sharing history on Lacey.
Great, I'm glad you're enjoying them.
John?
Nothing more than what I've already shared and
So, sir-
ruined the presentation on Robert's Rules of Order, but I apologize
That's all
for
that. Alan, did you have anything that you'd like to say? Okay, sounding quiet at this point. I'll go ahead and give my report. Couple of things, on the rack, kiosk, they've still got a couple of the panels that are being edited. The Nisqually Tribe and St. Martin ones in particular are still being worked through on the wording. I think most of the rest of them are about done. They've got some photo permissions that are still to be gotten. I know I've been working with them on a couple, trying to identify, who had the original photo and where they need to go to, kind of thing. So we had a couple from the Olympian that there was a contact I had with McClatchy Press that they didn't have, and so I got that funneled to them. They're hoping to have paper copies of what these look like in the next 7 to 10 days, along with perhaps one that's already been vetted, that they're going to then actually construct and have for showing. And then they're hoping to begin planning the overall unveiling event sometime in the near future. I would assume that will probably kick into motion sometime in early October, assuming that these panels get finished off. The other note that I had was that Thurston County Historic Commission wanted to make sure they invited us to the Heritage Day celebration they're going to have on October 26th from 10 to 2. And it's going to be at the Thurston County Fairgrounds. Aaron, I'm assuming you've got a copy of that. Could we have that sent around just to the various members
Sure.
on this committee? And they asked whether we had anything we might want to share or that type of thing. And I don't know that we've had any conversations in that regard.
Felicia and I have talked and we don't have the capacity this year to go.
Okay. I just wanted to check that. But anyway, I
The
think
move and everything.
I've
there's
been
no
to this
way.
event a couple of times and it's actually pretty interesting. They have a mixture of tables and some presentations that they'll be doing. So yeah, if we could just send that around to everybody so they know about it, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
That is my report.
What was the date again on that?
It's October 26th, 10 to 2 out at the fairgrounds. And they feed you cake too.
All right.
You're up.
Okay. So city council has approved the utility wraps. And I just wanted to show you, a few examples of what the boxes are gonna look like so that you can see the really cool work that Donna did on these. I'm gonna, move in here. Let's see. This. Oops, stop it. Let me share this. So here's an example with the Cecilia Smith Carpenter panel. So I know it was hard to envision with you know, the artworks that the kiddos did. But she took like elements from their artwork and continued them on the wrap and then included the information that we wrote up about them along with a portrait of the actual person and a QR code and all that good stuff. Here's the one with the two female pilots, Vivian Hicks and Gladys Baroker. I thought this was a cute, clever way to like make it fun. Let's go back. Stop it. It's very, very sensitive. This one I think is particularly cool, you know. She brought this flag out for one side of the panel and then it looks like a little city down there. So I think she did a really nice job of making
Yeah,
these
those look
look
quite nice.
like holistic. Come on. And doesn't this one look like a quilt? I love it. It's so cute for the women's club. Oh, come on. Nope. And there's the Jacksons.
Oh, Jim Liddell.
Teresa.
And this one, since there were two that people liked, they kind of combined them.
Okay.
So that's, I just want to show you like examples of what they're gonna look like.
Oh, yeah, those are nice.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gene.
Yes, I
So
know.
was the mayor, of course.
Okay, and then in addition to that, I wanted to remind you that I already mentioned, we're kind of coming into the end of year season, so elections are gonna be coming up for this body, so the next meeting, we will have nominations, so you should be thinking about whether you want to continue in your position. If you want to be up for a position, you should probably have a conversation with the chair or one of us or something. It'll make it easier, but we won't do elections at the next meeting, just nominations. Okay. So Felicia is in Japan for 2 weeks with a well-deserved vacation. I just wanted to share that. And Olivia, who is our intern, just got promoted to museum assistant. So she is now a part-time employee. And so she's totally covering the museum while Felicia is gone and is doing amazing stuff. And then I also wanted to share that History Talk season began last week. Next month, please join us for 6 Degrees of Separation. What do Kurt Cobain, General Douglas MacArthur, and Close Encounters have the Third Kind have in common? Leopold Schmidt, obviously. If you want to know what that's about, come to the program and you'll learn all about it. That's going to be October 10th at 6:30 right here.
One thing they have in common is Karen Johnson.
That's right. Because she's the speaker. Another piece of news that I wanted to share with you that will probably become an agenda item and potentially a public hearing in the future that you will have to preside over is that the Lacey Women's Club is disbanding. And they are relinquishing their clubhouse. Their plan, I don't know if it's been done yet, but their plan is to turn it over to City Gate Ministries. And they have yet to determine what they want to do with it. But I have spoken with them and talked to them about our concerns. They're really, really interested in keeping it on the historic register. They have some things to follow besides our historic preservation ordinance. They also have to follow the Lacey neighborhood, historic neighborhood zoning ordinance. But any change in use of the property has to come before this commission. And that's because the use can seriously affect, you know, the integrity of the historic nature of the building. Even though it's a residential neighborhood, that building is not a residence. So if they change it from a clubhouse to a residence, they have to bring that to this body.
Okay.
for approval. And I assume that no matter what they do with it, they're probably gonna wanna be doing some changes to it, so they sound like they wanna be really good neighbors, so I'm really hopeful that that's the case. I had a really nice conversation with one of their board members. It sounds like they do really good work in the community, which I think is the legacy that the Lacey Women's Club would like to have continue. So more to come on that, but I just wanted to let you know that that was happening.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I had someone inform me that they thought there were two different boards. Is that,
Of the women's club?
is that a false, there's two groups that,
I looked it up on the Secretary of State's office and there was just one.
Okay.
But unless it's called something else, there could be. I need to call Mary anyway, so I'll ask her if that's true.
I heard there was
She's the treasurer.
disagreement and the board split and there's two groups. But they may be wrong.
Interesting.
That makes some sense.
I do think there was a disagreement. I think that's probably true, but I don't know the details of it.
Okay.
That's all.
And any report from the director, or is that
Of
covered
course.
too?
She always gives me her report. She writes it
Okay.
up for me.
Oh, well, okay.
Here's her report. She misses you all, but is grateful to have a night off for a change. She didn't say that, but I'm saying that on her behalf. 2025 budget requests have been submitted and the budget process has begun and is underway. Museum requests include the leased space that we were just talking about earlier, and also includes a $15,000 request for the museum store, which is to print the Water, Woods and Prairies Thurston County History Book, which has no more copies left, and to also buy some merchandise for the store. So that we can start gradually building up our retail space for the store, for the new museum. We were appointed a youth commissioner from the Lacey Youth Council. Her name is Faith Kim. I just got her contact information today, so I'll be reaching out to her to get her to come to our next meeting and meet you all and get some orientation underway. And then Commissioners Tulai Patain and John Halverson were reappointed to serve second terms at yesterday's city council, or Tuesday's. Yeah, that is yesterday's city council meeting. That is all that Jen had to report.
Okay. Any other news, business, et cetera? Go to the
I would
order.
have said it already. I'm done. Let's go.
You said that, okay. So that means I'll entertain a motion to
Move to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I will second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, we are adjourned. See you next month.
Thank
Very
you.
good meeting, I think.
Bye.
Learned a lot tonight.
Aye.